I'm trying to think how I start this. Probably something like, hi, I'm Limcube, and traditionally I'm known to be like a Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, speedrunning, challenge run, explaining guy. But on this channel, Limcube Plus, in the past I have discussed extensively the lore of Tears of the Kingdom. If you've recently followed like any lore channels in the Tears of the Kingdom sphere, from like Celtic, Bandit, Nintendo Black Crisis, Hyrule Gamer, a lot of these people have basically come forward with their disappointment and frustration when it actually comes to the Tears of the Kingdom lore, me included. It seemed like they basically made a couple sad decisions there where they prioritized gameplay a little bit too much for the dedicated fan to be interested in it. But that's not why this video exists, and that's not what we're doing today, because this is not about Tears of the Kingdom. This is about Elden Ring. So Elden Ring is another game I play a lot. Actually, most recently on stream, I've been streaming it a lot. I have like almost 600 hours in it. And this channel, Limcube Plus, kind of dabbled a little bit in lore. I've always dabbled a little bit in Elden Ring lore, and I just want to today kind of dissect and discuss the lore elements of the Shadow of the Erdtree trailer. Now, warning, I am not Vati. I'm not Quaylark, who's actually a person that I highly recommend their video. She talked about a lot of the symbolism and interesting aspects of this trailer. That's not me. I am a Zelda guy that's really interested in this, so don't expect this to be the highest quality of theory, but instead expect this to be kind of like a discussion with my chat, people that are talking in here, or maybe you guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, about this lore and what you or I think this will be about. Basically, I'm going to just go over the trailer bit by bit. Going to give you my thoughts, people in chat might give you theirs, and we'll go from there. So yesterday, I uploaded my reaction to this trailer, and the first thing I thought when I saw this character right here was this kind of looks like Melina. Melina, obviously, in the base game is your finger maiden, kind of like on your, like basically with you on your journey through the lands between, and it's mainly because of that dress that made me think this. But more recently, people have come forward and have drawn kind of similarities with this character, and especially the words they say here, to a cut NPC called Rico. This Rico guy used to be in the game, and he gave you the Saint Trina's crystal ball. Again, this is cut content, so this might not have anything to do. This Rico guy might no longer exist, but I think this is still pretty interesting. This is a crystal ball featuring Saint Trina as a character, and what you would do in the game back then, before this was cut, is go to like a bunch of different animals, and I think that's also interesting because I want to talk about animals and the Crucible a little bit more going forward. A lot of these animals have kind of some Crucible characteristics, these large land octopuses, almost omen-like. We'll talk about bears later as well, another animal you would go to get their slumbering fog. And essentially this character would essentially go on to lead you towards Mohg's boss room, which is where this shot is taken in. So a lot of people are now saying this might be this Rico NPC returning, maybe with this slumbering mist quest, or maybe just appearing somewhere in the world, leading you to the boss fight arena, which makes a lot of sense because, like we all have thought, this very much seems to be the entrance to the DLC. We're gonna have to beat Mohg. Apparently, Miyazaki came forward in a video recently and said not only do we have to defeat the Lord of Blood, but also Radahn, which I thought was interesting. There's a character later that kind of looks like some weird Carrion Nokron fusion character. So maybe maybe we have to meet Rico in Nokron first or somewhere underground. I don't know why else you would have to beat Radahn. Maybe it has something to do with Ranni's questline. That's usually what comes to mind when you talk about having to defeat Radahn, like underground stuff. But we'll see. But basically, no matter what, this seems to be, at this point, basically... Actually, it is confirmed at this point, also from an interview with Miyazaki, that this is the entrance to the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC.
Nothing more terrifying.
The trailer then continues, cuts to black, and we see the first look of the Land of Shadow. And this, to me, is still one of the most puzzling aspects of this DLC at all, just like pretty much to anyone else. What exactly is the Land of Shadow? On the official page, what they say is the Land of Shadow is a place obscured by the Erdtree, where the goddess Marika first set foot, which to me, again, as somebody who's not an expert in lore, was confusing because I do seem to remember that at one point the first church of Marika at the very top of the mountain tops, which is pretty much up here, was basically described to be where she first arrived. Maybe after she ascended or descended from the Land of Shadows. There's multiple things that I want to talk about when it comes to the Land of Shadows. First of all, its general aesthetic. We have, let's actually, the next shot I feel like is even more telling of what this Land of Shadow is. I do want to briefly talk about these plentiful, like abundant, you could say, reeds on the ground though, that people have pointed out in the past. There's multiple locations basically in the Elden Ring base game that are kind of not known much about. The Land of Reeds, the Great Tree and the Crucible, the Land of the Numen, basically different locations are being talked about in the game, and for some reason this location almost seems to like kind of match to all of them, which really confuses me because either it's all the same place, or a lot of these places like the Land of the Reeds or like the origins of the Numen won't actually really be explained in this. Like maybe they will actually never really be covered, and this is just the Land of Shadow and these other places are other locations that we'll never really talk about. But I do think it's interesting how they all kind of connect to this specific place, and I'll explain a little bit more why. This here is a much better overview shot of the Land of Shadow. So we see a different tree, kind of like an intertwined tree we've seen ever since the DLC was announced, and more importantly, in my opinion, in the back of this tree, we see a big golden tree, probably the Erdtree. So it seems like this tree is literally in the shadow of the Erdtree. And to go even one step further, you can see these large cloth pieces coming out of the sky, these baldachins, literally out of the sky, kind of like hiding this shadowland behind the Erdtree's light. That's like symbolistic what this really looks like, which is really interesting, especially given that this is apparently the original location where the goddess Marika first set foot, because Marika, in her bedroom, has large baldachins just like this. That's what a lot of people have basically pointed out. Like, this is the queen's bedchambers, and around those bedchambers, these very similar baldachins are also hung up. And I was basically taking a look at the map in general, and even though it has been confirmed that you need to basically do some sort of warp to enter this Land of Shadow, I thought it was interesting that on the map you can see these rays of light or gold coming from the Erdtree, kind of like pointing towards this empty part of the map. And I do actually think that there is a fair chance that when you first enter the DLC, which I think is usually, let me see where Mogwin's Palace is, this is kind of like, I don't exactly remember where they place this mausoleum compared to the overworld of the game, but I think it's like kind of pointing into this direction as well. It could be somewhere entirely different, but I always thought it's interesting that this area of the map is empty, so maybe we switch by pressing like the stick button on the controller, and the new Land of Shadow will be in this place so that the graces kind of don't overlap as much. And once again, the rays of light kind of shine into this direction. There's just a chance that this will be on the map where they are placed. And again, if you look at the big picture of the Erdtree, it seems like the Erdtree is basically just behind these. The Shadow Tree is just behind the very much like glowing Erdtree. Doesn't have to be the case at all. It could be on a completely different layer, completely taken off, but it would make sense just from like I feel like a design perspective to have this space be taken up by the new area. In her interview, it was also said that this area is expected to be basically as big, if not larger, than Limgrave, and this open spot pretty much covers just about that sort of scale. Could be somewhere entirely different, but I thought there's some interesting points kind of hinting towards the fact that that could be where it will be placed. Not physically there, because again, we already confirmed to be basically warping there. But I kind of like the thought of it, especially with those baldachins that are also placed in the capital at Marika's bedchamber. I'm assuming that the entire idea is basically that these lands were now, for some reason, and Miyazaki said they can't go into this yet for a lore reason, hidden, or basically like hidden from the society of the Erdtree. Messmer's name, the guy who we'll talk about later, was never really said in the base game. No one really specifically talked about this land. It seems to be literally be like shrouded or hidden from the main locations of the game, and very much not known about. But anyway, moving on. And basically, once again, there is other potential matches for these lands that I find interesting. There is some locations that look like they have something to do with Deathroot. There's once again lots of reeds going on. Later in the Land of Reeds are kind of what the samurai armor in this game is originally themed of. And later on there's a scene in this blue flower field where the character is wearing the Land of Reeds armor. I don't know if this is physically even in the same place. This could be in some sort of dream because of how different and weird it looks. But I thought it was interesting that one, they're wearing the Lands of Reed's armor there, plus Miyazaki said in an interview that there's new forms of katanas coming into the game. The Land of Reeds are kind of like the Asian-inspired armor sets and weapons in the game. People have talked lots about the fact that this lion dance enemy seems to be kind of like inspired by Chinese folklore. And again, Miyazaki said in an interview that in these lands there was like a pre-existing folklore, pre-existing culture and tradition. So are these all the same location? Is this just a completely new location, the Shadowlands, and no one knows anything else about these other locations? Where is there so much speculation? People in the internet, and we'll talk about more actual direct in-game items that kind of like hint towards these speculations. Does that confirm anything? Absolutely not. Also, Jesse, thank you for the tier 1 sub. I very much appreciate it. It's good to see you. Now, again, we don't know what the Shadowlands are other than the Shadowlands or the Lands of Shadow. This shot is one of the, I feel like, least talked about shots. It seems the day and night cycle is still active, even in the Land of Shadow, because it seems to be night right here. People have talked about this being the Super Smash Bros. Logo as a meme, but I don't think anyone seriously knows what this depicts yet. Now this, again, is a shot we can talk about for probably 30 minutes, which I love about this game. This is why I'm interested in this game, and a lot of this could end up just being speculation, but there are so many cool details about this that are so much, like, again, rooted in interesting item descriptions that already exist in the game that I do want to talk about it. That's kind of the entire point of the stream. Starting with, again, another possible identifying aspect of the Shadowlands, which is this specific mask. This specific mask, and I got this one specifically from Quailag's video, very much is reminiscent of the Consort's mask. The Consort mask is this one right here that I am currently covering up with my camera. But anyway, this is the Consort mask. Also, we don't need Rico the NPC anymore, so this is the Consort mask. This is the mask here in gold. The slant, basically the eyes do look relatively similar. It's golden here instead of silver, but Quailag pointed out the similarities between this mask and the Tanith mask, which this is Tanith's mask, which I think is super interesting because when you actually read the Consort mask item description, it says that this mask was worn by Tanith, Lady of the Volcano Manor, in the image of a foreign queen. Long ago, when Rykard first set eyes on Tanith, she was working as a dancer in a foreign land. Soon, he made her his consort. So, not only do we have connections to a foreign land, potentially the Shadowland, but also we have some references dancing, which is featured in the trailer as well, and even more interestingly, Rykard. Rykard doesn't necessarily make an appearance in the DLC trailer from what we can tell, but snakes and serpents clearly do. She was the only human to remain by his side when he became the Serpent of Blasphemy. So that's Tanith. This foreign land and this foreign queen could be featured in this armor set as well. I think that's an interesting detail. Now, there's another interesting detail, which is the hilt of the sword. The hilt of the sword is kind of like this cloud-like decoration. We already have a sword in the game right now that has that same decoration. and that's Radahn's sword. The Star Scourge Greatsword. Can I get a bigger version of this one, please? I mean, this will do for now, I believe. The foam version for the cosplay. So this one right here is the Star Scourge Greatsword. This one right here is this new sword. Now you could say they don't look exactly alike, but I think they look pretty similar. And if you take it one step further, you can actually look up the Star Scourge Greatsword item description, and it specifically says here that these are a pair of weapons decorated with a lion mane motif. Lion mane motif, probably inspired by gods. We're getting a lot of names right now. Godric. Godfrey. I got it. Godfrey. Radahn was basically like the biggest Godfrey fanboy. And I think we have another potential interesting connection between a location in the game previously and this Shadowlands, which is the Badlands. I'm pretty sure the Badlands is supposedly a different area, but the reason I think the Badlands suddenly become really interesting is because, one, Godfrey's Knights are the Crucible Knights. We get an insane amount of Crucible references later on into the trailer. The Crucible Knights basically being, again, Godfrey's Knights. And all of the beasts going on in this DLC. I feel like it's more like the Upside Down, the Shadowlands. It kind of is, but it seems to be a physical place. I know what you mean. It could be like the reflection of the lands between, but it really does seem like it's a physical place sealed off. That's kind of what Miyazaki talked about. That there is a reason that these lands were split from the lands between, a lore reason that he cannot talk about yet. Again, I'm using obviously like information that has previously came out in this analysis, which is again making me kind of tie these lands to other mysterious locations that were talked about in the past. The Badlands could be something entirely different, and I'm sure, once again, because I'm not the absolute turbo expert, maybe there's even evidence that this cannot be the Badlands. But once again, Crucible Knights and Crucible themes being heavily hinted at in this trailer. All of the beasts, like the lion dance person that almost looks like Sarosh, the beast that Godfrey takes off on later, and this lion mane motif on the sword that is also featured in Radahn's Greatsword, who is once again a huge Godfrey fan, essentially. I thought was interesting about this shot.
In that forsaken place.
Now, I don't have too much to say about this shot. I've heard some people say this is supposedly a giant. I don't think it looks specifically ginormous here because we see the reeds in the background. Like, I feel like this could just be heavy armor and like a normal dude. What I thought was interesting is that the clouds here reminded me a lot of the Deathbed Dream, the location that you enter when you interact with Fia's questline. Also, once again, interesting with this entire Saint Trina sleep and dream mechanic. The Deathroot Depths, I do find interesting as well. I would kind of suspect this area basically to be above the Deathroot Depths, but hidden behind the Erdtree. Once again, I kind of imagine it to be... It used to be like here, but then it was like enshrouded under the baldachins that we see here. Split off for some lore reason we don't know about. I have no idea though. It could be literally in the Deeproot Depths. It could be at the mountaintops. It could be in my basement. I'm just putting all of my thoughts out there after watching the trailer and thinking about it more. This next shot, I think I got pretty much spot on yesterday. A lot of people seem to have agreed with me there. Purple-yellow color, purple-white color immediately makes you think of Saint Trina, sleep, slumber, the sleep status effect. We don't know much about this person regardless, but yeah, these new flowers, the purple light, this one back there looking pretty much like Saint Trina lilies. This has to have something to do with dreams and sleep. I don't think that personally, for me at least, there wasn't too much else to say, other than the fact that this face, a similar face like this later, shows up at the new big fire giant creature that is somewhat reminiscent of a Wicker Man. This shot is interesting because this basically now ties... for me, this would potentially tie in Radahn's and Rani's story a little bit more with this DLC. Because what we are looking at is basically undoubtedly related to the Carrion family and the Academy. I'm pretty sure that's one of the few places in the game where you can encounter... Let's go for the Academy of Raya Lucaria. These bird cages basically hanging on the ceiling. Where did I find this image? There was like a pretty poor image. This will do, surely. Basically, yeah, there's these bird cages hanging in the academy everywhere, and that's the first thing that comes to mind here, with these bird cages hanging in the sky. And then even more interestingly is the next shot that shows this person right here sitting on this throne, which is reminiscent of the, and again shoutouts to Quailag, that's where I saw that first, of the inverted carrion statue. It's like something like that. It's the statue you originally get when you... God, this is such a small image. Surely I can find one with higher resolution any minute now, right? What is this one coding in? Carrion inverted statue. Carrion inverted statue. Okay, surely this one would be higher resolution. I mean, it will do. This is supposedly a Carrion scholar that's depicted on this inverted statue, and the entire like aesthetic, especially the headpiece and the part of the face that's featured, is pretty reminiscent of this person. So this might be related to the reason we have to kill Radahn to enter the DLC. This next shot, everyone obviously reacted to the same way I expected, in that they were talking about this swamp and how Miyazaki loves to add swamps. But after some further looking into this, I thought specifically the ties to the Mirai family quite interesting. The Mirais have the shaded castle in the original game, the base game. And this is the Mirai set right here. It's also kind of reminiscent of the mask we've seen earlier. And they are very basically, they're like in love with Melania, the goddess of Rot. They also have built their house in a swamp. The next image makes this interesting too, because this next painting that's coming up is also a little bit reminiscent to the way they depicted Melania in their house, in their castle. And another thing that ties this DLC to the Mirai family are the Briars of Sin, which is an incantation that is featured in that area and by characters that are kind of related to the people that will eventually take over the shaded castle. Which is this right here, the Briars of Punishment. This is what the spell looks like. Can I get a new version of this? So I yesterday was looking at the new character, Mesmer the Impaler. And to me, the spell he was using very much reminded me of Bloodflame at first. But after looking into it a little bit more, this seems to be even a little bit closer of a match. Okay, this is like somebody's drawing. Can I get like an official shot? No. There's one way you can actually kind of see the flame he's casting. Actually, I should probably just go to the trailer. And then I just have to skip back. Here, this one. You can kind of see these like black thorns coming up. This the red coloration at the same time. It's not like a perfect match right away, but the Briars of Punishment are basically like kind of like a symbolism of somebody who like betrayed the Erdtree. He also heavily features snakes in his designs, who are like the #1 enemy of the Erdtree. So seeing some potential connection there between the Mirais making an appearance once again is interesting. Maybe the thorns are the shadow of the Erdtree. Yeah, the entire dark tree there does have a little bit of a thorny appearance to it. Let me actually read some stuff here as I'm just like kind of yapping. My headcanon right now is that we're entering Mikola's dream by touching his hand and his mind. The world is all twisted and he's reliving all the fucked up things that happened during the Shattered War and prior. We gotta help him fight the corruption caused by Moog and his own shadows. Good idea, and I was thinking something pretty similar to that yesterday until I read the Miyazaki interviews. It is specifically said that the Land of Shadows is a physical location here where the goddess Marika first set foot. We might be entering a dream version of it, Like maybe these lands don't exist anymore and we do enter a dream version of it. And then Miyazaki in an interview has said that these lands did exist and they were basically for a lore reason not available to us yet, hidden or like physically separated from the lands between. But it could be deeper than that. It could be something like that. It could be like dreams and sleep definitely seem to play a role in it. Perhaps you meant physically separate in a technical way. Let me actually read what he specifically said, because maybe I didn't read it correctly. But was it the IGN interview? I don't know. IGN is a little bit suspicious these days. Following Nicholas' footsteps to the land shadow, reveal motivation to them. Where is this? Actually, I kind of want to reread this. Does it have relation to Mikola? And Mikola has, as we said, travels to the land of shadow. Yep, he has some objective there. Where is the... oh, it might be this one. In terms of settings and themes, it technically occupies the same space that lands between in the same universe, but due to something story-related we won't reveal today, this has become physically disconnected. And you can't, and you'll travel to the shadow of the Erdtree land as a separate place. Like physically disconnected makes you think that it used to be a physical place. But anyway, in this next shot, we see jars hanging. I immediately obviously thought of the living jars, which, like I even said yesterday, supposedly normally their job is to run around, gather warrior bodies, and then bring them to the churches and the Erdtree avatars who will then like fertilize the Erdtrees. These might be different jars. They might be the same jars used for a different reason. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this location too much. Everyone immediately says Volcano Manor when they see this. There's also this Mount Gelmir Hero's Grave that is like similar to this aesthetic. I'm assuming this is just some new catacomb, new area in the Land of Shadows. And then this, I think, is still pretty interesting. We actually, in this painting, this spiral symbolism shows up a lot. It shows up on the pillars here, it shows up later in the trailer, and it actually also shows up on the painting with the dude and the lady that I kind of tied towards the Marai family, right here in her like hair decoration. It's kind of, we see that spiral there again, so maybe this family is related to this place in some way or another. It looks very sophisticated though, very large. Some large legacy dungeon, I'm assuming, in terms of actual gameplay. Do you think she's pregnant? Yeah, she's holding her hand there. That's what I hear a lot of people say. Could be. I liked Qualark's initial thinking about this too, that this could just be this man's deathbed companion. We've talked about Fia briefly before, and how she basically kind of ties back to the Baldurkins. She gives you the Baldurkin blessing. There's these Baldurkins everywhere in the sky. Deathbed dream. The sky kind of looked like that. Maybe deathbed companions do show up in some way, but they could also just be related. This person could be pregnant. Have you seen that cloth-looking texture in the sky? It looks like, yeah, I talked about the Queen's bedchamber, and how that might be why. Like, that is my theory right now. Why you can't travel to the Shadowlands is because America, like, hid them away. I think she is hiding away her child Mesmer. And, dude, I never even thought about this, but maybe Mesmer, for some reason, isn't actually Radagon's kid, which makes no sense because the hair looks so much like Radagon. So it wouldn't make any sense at all. But maybe there's another reason that America specifically is hiding him away from the rest of the world. It's likely just Melania's and Mikola's brother. Like, that's what I really do believe. But kind of an interesting thought. But to me, that seems that might be, that's my running theory as to why they are hidden, is because Marika is like enshrouding them in some way. Because she has her hidden child Mesmer there, and for other reasons that we might not know yet. And again, this could be entirely wrong, but that's like my running theory. Anyway, so this is apparently a Wicker Man, which comes from Celtic mythology, and as usual is also featured in Berserk, From Software's favorite inspiration when it comes to making these games. Which is literally basically just a basket of burning bodies. It does, once again though, kind of tie nicely back into the entire punishment theme. Fucked up looking boss. I thought Fallen Empyrean would be a pretty cool twist. I do really believe that, I don't know if Mesmer is an Empyrean, but I very much believe that he, well, I guess if he was Radagon's and Marika's child, then because they're born from a single god, they would automatically qualify to be an Empyrean. I really do believe that they are related, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we actually see Mesmer again. Anyway, we got the sucking off worm. Don't quote me on this. Apparently Miyazaki said that there's a reason that this creature looks the way it does, but he can't go into it for lore reasons. This character is wearing the Carrion Knight set, which I think has absolutely zero lore meaning, even though Carrier might be involved, but the characters in this are running around with all sorts of armor, which is kind of weird of me to say because I read probably a little bit too much into the armor of the reeds that the character was wearing earlier. This does seem to be in the Shadowlands though, because you can still see that Baldakin even in front of the moon right here in the back. That's the only interesting detail that I found about this shot. Now this, to me, is bringing an entirely new layer into the DLC that I had not immediately seen yesterday. I saw this shot, my immediate thought was, this is the Godfrey fight when he transforms into Horalu. Like, that's what this cutscene looks like, because of the beast, because of the lion. But, if you look at this creature like a little bit more, these feet, I also said, yeah, we're analyzing feet right now, reminded me a lot of Margit / Morgoth, and like the Omen creature. But then this shot puts in so much more into the occasion, into the situation. Let me like close some of these links so I don't get too confused. I haven't even talked about Marika being a Numen and the Numen's rune yet. Maybe I'll have some time for that. But this is where the Crucible. Let me actually do this in Google Images. Comes into play. I saw that plate of armor on that creature, which is looking like this. And that is almost pretty much a perfect match, at least in terms of color. Like, I don't know exactly the motives that are on it, but the color immediately is reminiscent of the Crucible Knight armor. There's many more Crucible Knight themes later in the trailer. That stands out. The Omen Horns stand out, who also are related to the time of the Great Tree. Apparently there used to be this Great Tree where all life was kind of mixed together. It was like this like cooking pot of life where that's the reason that Crucible Knights can like grow a tail and like swing their tail around or have like a dragon claw suddenly. It's like this mix of life. The misbegotten enemies at Morn Castle that are like a little bit all over the place of like tails and feather wings are all basically tied back to that time of the Crucible. We can even see that this lion has like a human. This looks like a human, like it's more teeth than what humans would have. And then like a second set of teeth coming out right here. And what I thought was interesting there is that item description of the Old Fang. The Old Fang is this tooth that looks a little bit similar. It's this right here. And this is dropped from the Lion Guardian enemy, which is also pretty reminiscent, at least partially, of the creature we've just seen. A lion with white hair and like cut off horns. They cut off the Omen horns in the lands between. But again, let's read the item description of the Old Fang. It literally says... I already closed it. I'm bad. Oh no, I didn't. These multiple overlapping fangs grow from a single root. Perhaps they are a vestige of the primordial crucible. And that's once again another hint here that this is some crucible. We'll see it later when it starts moving, because it has literally multiple like human limbs. It has omen horns. It has Crucible Knight armor look-alike. It has 2 sets of teeth. It has this lion hair, but the lion hair is braided almost the way like a human would do that. To me, this is basically exactly what the Crucible stands for, like a ball of life. To me, this seems like a battle attire worn by two guys. You can see feet standing on top of each other, but body later. This is what I keep hearing. I keep hearing people say this is like two guys in a lion armor, but that just doesn't make sense. Like it makes sense that that's the inspiration. It makes sense that this is inspired from like the Chinese lion dance, but this animal head is way too animate to not actually like be an animal head, in my opinion. And once again, to me, everything else about this enemy screams Crucible, some not grafted, like almost like naturally grafted creature that was born in this like sparkling crucible of life. Maybe it's just two dudes cosplaying. I personally believe this is related to the Crucible. But maybe it's just two men. I know what you mean, the shot where the fog is coming out. Right here you can see legs, but the human legs will also be part of this Crucible ball of life. But the way it moves, all of the features on it really makes me think there's a little bit more to it. The Crucible in general, again, becomes a little bit more interesting later. And once again, I am conflicted yet again about the actual heritage of the Shadowlands, like what the Shadowlands are. They might just be an entirely new, again, location, and all of these other places will have nothing to do with it. But Siluria's tree, another Crucible Knight we fight in the Deep-Root Depths, by the way. The primordial form of the Erdtree is close in nature to life itself. And this spear, modeled on its Crucible, is imbued with its holy essence. Again, a Crucible Knight. That entire enemy boss design reminded me of the Crucible, talking about the primordial form of the Erdtree, the Great Tree, a tree that many people have speculated about in the past. Is the tree, the shadow of the Erdtree, the Great Tree, and is it not the shadow, but the Erdtree has actually overshadowed it? No clue. But that's immediately what stood out to me, the Great Tree, and again, the Crucible. And then one other thing that I thought interesting is because they specifically say here that this is where the goddess Marika first set foot these lands of shadow. She is, by the item description of her weapon, described to be a Numen. Actually, even this one here, the Numen are said to have come from outside the lands between and are in fact the same stock as Queen Marika herself. So Queen Marika is a Numen. And something that I also found interesting is that the Numen rune, and this is probably the most copium of everything I've said, but I still thought it was interesting. And if any company put this much detail into something, this would be it. The Numen rune, wow, this is very high resolution. This is actually too high resolution. Has a center that once again reminds me of the Crucible and the Haunts, potentially tying it back to that. If you compare them to the other great runes that just have like a black circle in the middle. The most copium used today. It looks a little bit more stand out in this one. It's a giant basket, actually where the Crucible Knights exist. Do they get fortune there? No, the giant basket is literally just a body of, like a bin of burning bodies where, and like, soldiers that have lost the war or something get like punished in there. It's pretty horrifying. It's based on a Celtic mythology being called the Wicker Man. Anyway, Mesmer. Obviously the most intriguing character of the entire thing, in my opinion. Now, again, I'm going to use this once again. To me, I said it earlier, reminds me very much of the Briars of Punishment incantation and the entire like thorns that are featured in the game. He's showing up here with these snake motifs all over the place, and that's why so many people have said, oh, I actually need to use my own Discord for this because I already described it a little bit better when it comes to my thoughts there. But here is basically described to have these two snakes with him. And a lot of people tied the snakes back to Rykard. But it's more like the other way around, I feel like. The snakes in the lands between are known to be the natural enemy of the Erdtree. Maybe this guy is the reason that snakes are hated in the first place, and the reason he's basically hidden away. And not the other way around. This is not like Rykard's son, and that's why he has snakes. It's more like that snakes, the enemies of the Erdtree, who are also trying to basically commit blasphemy with Tanith and Rykard against the Erdtree, are considered the original enemy of the Erdtree, because of this dude. It looks like Bloodflame Thorns, yeah. Now, let me actually move this one over. I kind of described this right here a little more. Here you can see Messmer's design again, and he very much is reminiscent of the Drake Knight set. A lot of people have pointed this out. This Drake Knight set is a set that Eleonora wears when she invades you, the girl with the what is it, the pole blade, the bloody twin blade, the Darth Maul like twin blade, right? And what I thought was really interesting is that it features this one singular horn that's kind of twisted in this way. Later on in the trailer, we see this incantation, presumably incantation, which kind of features a bear that also has like a twisted and weird horn like this, making it seem like there's some weird connection between bears and dragons. Once again, all life was one. The Crucible comes to mind. And the reason that's so interesting, in my opinion, is because there was literally, and this was found years ago by Zuli the Witch, a rune bear in the network test of the game. This was still when content was cut out. And when you killed that rune bear, it gave you a dragon heart. And people were like, oh, that's probably misplaced. Why would a rune bear give you a dragon heart? And since then, people thought it was probably just misplaced. But ever since it was looked into more, that the animals that basically grow large because of runes like the rune bear have some resemblance to dragons. And it seems like that in this, we literally have some like bear dragon going on. This guy is like kind of warring around like the incantation we see later in the game, but that's just towards the Crucible again, and dragons and beasts kind of all being one and like intertwined at one point. There's more enemies later on that hint towards the Crucible. This is kind of like going ahead a little bit, but later on in the trailer, our character is literally using a Crucible spell, the one where you gain wings. Again, Crucible all over the place. But this, so apparently it was confirmed in a Japanese interview that Messmer is likely the child of Radagon. Not necessarily of Radagon, I think it's only confirmed that he's Marika's child. Yeah, you can link the bear video, that's where I got the screenshots from. Messmer gives me a Nameless King vibes. He seems to be more towards Dragonkind than Golden Order. I bet there was something to do with the way he's been deleted from history and thrown into this other world. Probably. Maybe he was like neglected and his way to get power was like consuming dragon hearts. Following, maybe Dragon Communion is like founded by him in a way. That was like his way to gain power. Something like that. I can definitely see that. But basically, this is where it really comes together, in my opinion. In the past, have always been these three butterflies, right? The Aeonian butterfly, the nascent butterfly, and the smoldering butterfly. And in the past, people have always said, Aeonian butterfly is Melania, nascent butterfly is Mikola, smoldering butterfly is Melina. And that never really like truly fitted, other than in the Frenzy Flame ending, where Melina kind of goes like burn mode. But if we actually look to these three characters side by side now, that's a much better match. If they actually had a third secret brother, Messmer, he fits so much better with the smoldering butterfly in mind. Kind of tying these three butterflies, this butterfly theory that was talked about many times in the base game, way, way better together. Now, I do still think it's interesting to think a little bit about about Melina specifically, but let me read this real quick. The Dragon Communion punishment is crawling on your belly for the rest of your life, getting turned to magma worm, so I'd be surprised if that was involved. I've heard about this before, that you'd slowly turn into a magma worm, but it definitely seems like Messmer may have controlled that a little bit better, because you can definitely see a lot of draconic features on him. Not only his like dragon type eyes, these could also be snake eyes, but the eyes look very similar. Where's that? At the end, a lot of people have talked about how this symbol right here on the left side looks a lot like the seal of Dragon Communion. What is it called again? The Arcane Seal? Dragon, I don't know what it's called anymore. Something dragon. Yeah, he's got dragon wings. basically right here, sticking out of him. The snakes have wings as well. The snakes, even in Volcano Manor, have wings attached to them. So having like some sort of tie-in there, I think is not necessarily impossible. What is that stupid seal called? Like Dragon Communion Seal? It's something like that. Anyway, if you know what I mean, that looks somewhat like this left part. Oh wait, I have it on my Discord, no? Yeah. Here, this seal. A lot of people have basically talked how it's like similar in appearance to the left side of the flame, but that could be a mismatch. And then again, I think the most interesting one is the close resemblance between the Drake Knight set and Mesmer's design. Might just be a coincidence, and he has nothing to do with dragons and only something to do with snakes. But I think there's a couple of interesting. Once again, this bear that's featured with the single horn that's also featured on the Drake Knight set. There's some interesting connections. Could be completely wrong. Let's go back into the trailer. We've already talked about the fact that he might be related to Melania and Mikola, simply just because of the butterfly theory and because he's now confirmed to be Marika's child. Why was he hidden away from everyone else? We don't know. I've heard a lot of people say that Mesmer is like Mikola's alter ego, who is trapped in this like inverted version of the world. Not sure about that, but I feel like there's actually a pretty good chance that he is just a separate being that for some reason was deleted from history, like some people in chat have also said.
Rest of light.
Also, what is said in the trailer here is somewhat interesting. He talks to his mother and says, basically, like, how could you make someone like this? How could you allow someone like this to be a lord? This could come from a scene where Mesmer is literally talking about us, the player, being on our way to become Elden Lords. So he would be like, why would this guy be Elden Lord, mother? Like, he doesn't even have any lights. And like, why not me? So I don't really know what's going on there. That's super interesting. What is interesting to me, and this kind of just dawned upon me right now, is I find it really intriguing. Everything hints towards that this guy would be Marika's and Radagon's child, but we have had instances where Radagon went on to have children that are not related to Marika. So I'm wondering right now if there's a chance that Marika had a child that's not related to Radagon. And I mean, I think she did, right? The children that she had with Rick are canonically not Radagon's children. But it's going to be interesting to see if this was one of her children while it was hidden away. If we enter the sea through Mikola, then it's probably entering his dreams. So it could be Mikola, but corrupted to Moog interference. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. But it is also confirmed that it doesn't seem to be his dream, which is interesting. Miyazaki has confirmed that yes, we enter it through his hands, but we are teleporting there, and somewhere maybe that's the original way we enter there, but the Shadowlands are confirmed to be a physical place to some extent. Physically taken, or at least used to be, physically taken away for a lore reason that we don't know, from the lands between. But maybe they used to be in the past and they're like lost and we are entering a dream version of them. But it is confirmed that we enter through the hand, not just from the trailer, but from Miyazaki himself. The absolute balls of a DLC behind Moog. I'm very intrigued. So Miyazaki said not only behind Moog, but also behind Radahn. Mikola is a demigod, you can truly dream real-world continents away into the stream. Maybe, something like that. It does seem weird, though, that Marika seems to also physically be there, but it could also be, once again, a dream version of Marika. Maybe, it's weird. These demigods can just, like, put their flesh somewhere and exist in another place, similar to Rani. That's what this described here again, right? It's like, he divested himself of his flesh, strength, and lineage, and then went into that place, maybe in a dream. So we didn't completely mend the Elden Ring at all. Well, this DLC is outside, this was also confirmed, of the original story of the game. Like, this doesn't have any impact to the main story of the game. You can go there at any time and learn more about the world. But I don't think there's like any canon ending that is assumed to have taken place for this story to have made sense. It's almost undoubtedly that dreaming and sleep will play a role in this DLC. I'm just not entirely sure if this whole thing is a dream. There is a lot of things that are speaking towards that, like the clouds that look like the deathbed dream, the purple color of that butterfly spell later. But I almost want to say it's unlikely that Mesmer is just a nightmare, but could be possible. Maybe he's just like a nightmare version of Mikola, and I kind of wouldn't like that if it was like all of this is just a dream, but it could be a mix where like this used to be real and Mikola hid it in a dream. Anyway, we've talked about Mesmer now briefly. Then there's a new moveset with new dual swords. So it has been confirmed that there's 8 new weapon types in the game, which I find interesting now because of the randomizer. I've been playing this game more, testing out different weapons. This could just be using this, like, power stancing the same sword, but I could actually see it possible that this is a one, like kind of like the Star Scourge Greatsword, like a single weapon coming with a new moveset, like a new weapon type, like dual swords. We see another character wielding dual swords later, so I feel like that's not too far-fetched, but it could just be power stancing the same sword twice. Fighting a new enemy with, once again, what looks to be some form of omen horns, could be different horns, holding a candlestick, which previously had ties to Centrina, aka Mikola, before. The moveset looks cool though. Then this also is actually not a consumable item, but likely a new weapon type called throwing daggers. Miyazaki talked about this one too in the interviews. So this seems to be a weapon that you equip, and then you can literally range attack with your weapon. I don't know if there's going to be some sort of ammo system, like maybe you need the base weapon and ammunition, but this is a new throwing knife moveset. We also see this spiral motif that we've previously seen at the pillar and this one girl's hair. Again, not sure if this stands for family. This could have some ties with the snakes again, because, you know, it's kind of what snakes do, but might also not be a snake at all and just a symbolic motif. This guy gets staggered from 4 knife throws, and this is also what I talked about. We have butterflies again. We talked about butterflies now before. And that same, it's actually a little bit more pink and purple than the Mists of Slumber, so it might not have anything to do with sleep. Once again, though, the back has a lion with omen horns, crucible reference, question mark. Yesterday, I thought this might be Roderica. Her dress reminded me a lot of Roderica, and even the hair. But Roderica is a red hood, this is blue, and this is a hood in the game, so this might just be a player character using one of the new incantations in the game. Now, yeah, and actually the kick-type weapon might be a weapon and not just an Ash of War. Because if there's 8 new weapon types, we have the throwing daggers, the dual swords, maybe martial arts. Later on we'll see a shield twin blade, like a dual shield. That could be a new weapon type. Like an offensive shield that's actually made to deal damage. I also really hope that this is not just an Ash of War, what's up modded by the way, but literally a weapon. Because like the sound, especially of that last kick, is just too satisfying. I also really like the Bloodborne head. Now this I don't think is a weapon. This big firebomb is probably just a consumable or some environment hazard that it can use. This is interesting. This could just be a crossbow, but with its fire rate, I almost wonder if it's like a new like hand cannon ballista type weapon. This is like the coolest drip of the whole DLC, by the way, in my opinion. It's like a bigger version of the Knights Cavalry. People have pointed out that what they're firing here looks very much like the Perfumers look in the game. The Perfumers throw stuff that looks like this, but it could just be the way they depict gunpowder or flammable powder. Now this is the incantation I already talked about. At first I thought this was an enemy, but the more you look about it, it does look like... Also, this would be a new armor set if this was a playable character, but it seems like they are literally holding a seal in their hands, which makes you think that they are casting an incantation right now, featuring some sort of bear dragon. I talked about the bear dragon and how this reminds me of the Drake Knight set before. And then we have this. Now this is what makes me think of Dream the most, because it looks so visually different than the rest of the Shadowlands we've seen. It could still all be on the same plane, but we suddenly have these blue flowers and we have this enemy that looks like they're using something like the flowing water moveset. So whereas this is like the prosthesis, so it's not the blue dancer, whatever, blue dancer charm, because clearly the person we're about to see are fighting something red. Here, let's read these descriptions. But anyway, there used to be this dancer in blue who represents a fairy who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman, likely Melania. Blade in hand, the swords. Oh wait, actually, maybe the blind swordsman was someone else. That was Melania's teacher, I believe, who sealed away the god of rot. But we also see this teacher in the prosthesis wearing heirloom. And they do not look like that girl with the dual swords in the trailer, because they're using a single weapon. But the way they're fighting reminds me a lot of like the starting class of the warrior. Actually, let's read the blue cloth set here real quick. Is there any interesting lore here? The blue color of its fabric symbolizes brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the sword in hand of its wearer. Just as still waters turn foul, stagnation leads to decay. I actually kind of think it's interesting how this features both the red color of rot, but like the blue themes of water we just talked about, and the way they move just makes me think of flowing water. This could be a base enemy, but I feel like this almost looks more like a boss fight arena. This might be because it reminds me of Sekiro's final boss. If you're familiar with the theory that the Divine Towers form a pentagram if you draw a line between them, I bet this landmass is placed at the center of it on a different plane. In the interview they said, that's exactly what I said, Manley, at the start of this. People seem to not agree with me too much, but I personally think that would fit perfectly, not just from a game design perspective, but from a like, you see the Erdtree literally like kind of like shining rays down here, and the Erdtree is like behind this shadow tree. There's like a space here that pretty much is a little bit bigger than Limgrave. It makes sense that you weren't there yet, but I completely agree with you. Like Miyazaki said, the area looks like this is probably going to be slightly bigger than Limgrave. That kind of fits here too. You could like press the stick and it would be on a different plane, but occupying this space. I do really think that makes the most sense, but we will see. Anyway, I'm not too sure about this shot. It looks beautiful, that's all I know. The moveset reminds me of like flowing water. The armor kind of reminds me of the warrior starting class. And once again, they're using a dual sword, so maybe that could be... Is this not the sword that the character is using earlier? This looks like some sort of somber weapon to me, like some sort of boss weapon with how intricately it's designed. Which makes me think, again, it's probably a boss weapon. And it might be part of that new it might be a new part of that new weapon class, like dual swords. Also, what's up, Artie? How are you doing? Limgrave is named after Limcube. I wish. Tanith, when she was a dancer, yeah, that's what I said. Like earlier when we read Tanith's item description, she used to be a dancer in a foreign land. Was she related to this tribe of people? I don't know. But apparently her mask was designed after a queen from a foreign land. Maybe after her, maybe not. Maybe she's not a queen, maybe she's a normal NPC, I don't know. But that's at least what I'm thinking about when these themes come up. Oh no, hopefully you feel better soon, Artie. I'm doing good. I've been talking for like an hour already about the lore of this trailer, and I'm gonna upload this to LimQ Plus, just because I randomly became like a lore channel when Tears of the Kingdom came out, and I really enjoyed talking about this with everyone. I just got here, so I don't know what's been talked about. I was just thinking about how everyone was thought the arm in the cocoon belongs to Mikola, but in the trailer it seems more like it's Mesmer's arm. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. The arm seems much bigger in terms of size. The only reason I believe it could be Mikola is because it is specifically said on the website that he has divested himself of his flesh. But I really do agree that the hand fits much better with Mesmer's hand. And you know what? I said this yesterday. The Grace, I believe, is specifically called the Egg of the Empyrean. So it never is specifically confirmed to be Mikola. And if what everyone is thinking now, which is that Mesmer is the cocoon of the Empyrean, yeah. Which is that Mesmer is Mikola's and Melania's hidden secret brother. And if he was born by Radagon and Marika, that would still basically qualify him to be an Empyrean. So maybe the cocoon of the Empyrean is the cocoon of Mesmer instead. I don't know. But that also would be weird, because I'm pretty sure that cocoon was stolen from the Erdtree by Moog. I don't know, but I think there is some interesting... That is an interesting point, because the hand matches infinitely better with the Mesmer statue, with the long arms and big hands, compared to when we see Mikola later. Like, look at his hand. It's like small and I mean, he's like Curse of Eternal Childhood, right? I always thought that was weird. I always thought like this doesn't look like Mikla. In my mind, it was like, okay, maybe his body has like changed because of the way like Moog has corrupted him. But I definitely agree, it's interesting. Some people believe that that's what he was doing in that cocoon besides going into the dream. Oh, he was like, yeah, exactly. That's what it was. It was like people where he was trying to get rid of his eternal childhood, so he went to this cocoon to become like stronger. That maybe explained it. But now with Mesmer, like with actually seeing Mesmer, this makes more sense potentially. But anyway, I still don't. This location is kind of puzzling to me. The graves in the back look different than any graves we've seen previously. And actually, speaking of puzzling locations, I saw this yesterday. This is not super visible on my screen, but there's like an area in the top left here that's like really green in compared to the rest. There's been screenshots of this area close range where this looks like entirely like Limgrave, like super green and lush. So this might still be on the same plane, but in a different area. I think it's so good that we get to interact with these Empyreans besides just fighting them. I'm stoked to meet Mikala. Yeah, we'll talk about Mikala and our meeting at the end. But I think this will cover a lot of topics. Like I thought this will just go into Mikala's story, but now that I've seen much more about the Crucible, I think this will give us many more answers about the past of the lands between, the Erdtree, the Crucible, and stuff. I don't know how much Godwin and Fia are gonna, maybe their story is just done, but I don't know if they'll show up again. But yeah, anyway, so now let's move past the Dancer. Very dancey moveset. Now this, some people have talked about this and said this is gravity, and I actually need to see this for myself, because yesterday when I saw this for the first time, I specifically said this doesn't look like gravity, but then I thought about the Rune's Greatswords. So let me actually see the chart. Okay, no, never mind. It definitely does look like gravity. For some reason, I thought this is not as lightning themed, but it definitely is just it's just gravity lightning then.
He likes the jumping attacks. So
okay, Chase, big fan. Can you show me the charged R2 of the weapon?
Crouch poke. It has a running slash
the charged
attack,
R2.
and then the running slam down attack is the running heavy. It also gets a backstep light attack.
Why is he not using the charged R2?
In that way, this is going to be in a 1v1 very wide AoE attack.
Or like L2?
Okay. He's tuckering himself out. I'm going to aim it right
Oh, there.
here.
Okay, perfect. Okay, it's definitely gravity. What this person is using, like a new gravity. I thought sword at first, but this seems to be a lance upon closer like inspection. Like some sort of great lance imbued with gravity lightning. Pretty fucking badass. And he's riding a boar. Well, actually, if it's a lance, I don't know if it's a perspective. It would be kind of short, but it does look more like a lance than anything. Also, it kind of looks like maybe this is just me, but it looks like it like turns into a sword. Maybe this is like a lance sword hybrid, or this is just the gravity magic like distorting the image of it, but it looks like it's turning into a sword, which could be pretty cool. I know we talked about it yesterday, Pancake, but maybe this is a new hybrid weapon between like lance and sword. On this frame, it kind of looks like that. But yeah, Shadow Tree Sentinel. So instead of Erdtree Sentinel, this will be a Tree Sentinel, but like for this tree. Likely. Or potentially. Now this is the Hippo Porcupine. Once again, to me, this is like the #1 imagery of the Crucible. Literally just two life forms mixed together. And the way they manifest as well is very much like the tails of Crucible Knights or the wings of Crucible Knights. Now, this is the enemy I feel like I have the least idea about in the whole thing. Lots of people memed that this is basically Orphan of Kos on a horse. For a second, I thought the back kind of reminds me of a turtle shell, but I think there's a frame later where they jump and it's more like round. So it's actually not. YouTube, can we like skip back a couple frames? Yeah, here, it's looking like a round torso, very strange head. Not the orphan, yeah, I hope not. Now, yeah, this is what people talked about, that this is likely the person from the painting at the start, because they have the same like brooch, I think is the word, and the same color of cloth around their neck, and the face matches, so I think that's pretty likely. This might be in, my guess is that this is some sort of enemy or some sort of encounter in this big building, because we have the spirals going on here. The person that's next to that man has spirals next to her hair, and later on we see this person punished by something that looks like some manifestation. People call this a manifestation of like a sacred like knife. It kind of looks like the Black Blade holy version, even though the Black Blade already is holy, and even like the baseline of the Elden Ring, but it could just be some other shard that he's pulling out his face. Not sure if we're going to be fighting him. I wonder if we can get new weapons outside of the DLC too. I would be able to do an entire playthrough with new classes. So you mean like starting with these new weapon classes? One thing that Miyazaki talked about, which I thought was super interesting, and if you haven't heard the interviews yet, I wonder about your thoughts about this, Pancake. I like the base idea of it. Apparently, the DLC is going to have a mechanic like Sekiro's attack power, to make it so that you can't be super over-leveled when you go into the DLC. So when you go into the DLC and you beat bosses, you will get something like attack power, and you'll have to use that attack power to gain more strength in the DLC. I have no idea how that's going to go for like balancing the whole game, and God knows with the randomizer. But that's actually something that was talked about. I do also wish that these new weapons can be maybe started with. Yeah, so that's just the mechanic. It would be for within the DLC only. Yeah. The base game, in the base game, it makes sense that it's only the DLC. I don't know how you would do that in the randomizer, I said, Otta. Like, if a DLC boss was randomized to the base game. But that's not something to really worry about yet. The game isn't even out. But yeah, if you didn't play Sekiro, the way it works is you beat a boss, and when the boss is dead, you get an item, you use that item, and then you get more attack power. So I'm assuming that will be a feature in the DLC so that you can't be overleveled going into it. So you have to beat bosses to become stronger in the DLC. Yeah, nice. Sounds good. Okay, this guy's pulling his head off. I don't know what has happened to him or why he was punished like that and what status he was on when he was still on the painting. Now here is the showdown, which I believe is not the big showdown of the DLC. I liked that a lot of people have talked about this. The poster child boss for From Software DLCs in the past have traditionally not been the hardest boss in the DLC. Like, for example, Artorias was like featured in Dark Souls. We had like Lady Maria and Bloodborne, and there was always something that was like revealed later that was scarier. Not always, but like for the most part. And I would be surprised if Mesmer was like this DLC's Melania, because they already show so much about them. I will post a different theory at the end who I think might turn into a boss. But yeah, we do see a little bit of the fight here. This is like literally the coolest design ever. I can't wait to use this armor. Imagine getting this armor or this spear in a randomizer. Maybe it sucks. I'm just so excited to play with all of these weapons. Like, man. So here, I will say he's using Mesmer's flame, like his flame, and it does look definitely much more fiery than the Briar's, but it looks like some weird hybrid in between, so it could be an entirely new flame we've never really seen. It also looks a little bit, now that I think about it, the deep red reminds me a little bit of the Giant's flame that's kept in the forge up there, the one that's capable of burning the Erdtree, so maybe there's some relevance there. Oh, I haven't even touched on this yet. The fact that Melina is using the Giant's Flame to burn the Erdtree in the main game, and that Mesmer is like hidden away from the Erdtree. He's using snakes who are like the symbolism against the Erdtree. Like, the Erdtree society hates snakes. So maybe he has tried to cultivate, maybe he has something to do with the Giant's Flame, maybe he has like inherited it through Radagon through some means. I think that's somewhat interesting. But where's the close-up of his face? Like, I'm not entirely sure if his second eye is open. It kind of looks like more open here. But in this shot, it looks like more closed. And that obviously makes you think of Melina, who we especially now, if Mesmer is confirmed to be the third child of Marika and Radagon, the third Empyrean potentially. The fourth, technically. Melina is like even more uncertain. Like, who is she then? So I do wonder if there's some tie-in with Melina and the people in this DLC. Especially because in this shot, it looks like his left eye is shut, but maybe Melina would just be Melina. Okay, hear me out. The first words in the trailer are, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men, which I thought referred to Mikola. That's what I still think, but I'm going to continue to read your comments. But then I analyzed Mesmer's name. Sounds like mesmer, mesmerism, right? I've heard of this. Means hypnotism, a compelling attraction, fascination. In other words, he can mean love, but other definitions are act or putting someone into a mental state of sleep in which a person's thoughts can be easily influenced by someone. I think that is possible. And I do think we could be talking actually more about Mesmer at the start here, because the hand matches him, and maybe this person is talking about Mesmer instead. But I do think, I saw somebody talk about this, the way it specifically said that they are wielding love as like a weapon does really scream Mikola to me. The bewitching branch item talks about the fact that Mikola became aware of his charm and being able to kind of manipulate people with falling like in love with him. So it is almost like he's using it as a weapon. And I will still talk about something at the end of the trailer that makes me think there might be more to Mikola than we believe and more to the complexity of this world. I still think that's a fair idea. And maybe they are talking about Mesmer, but to me, he doesn't seem like, as much as he might be like a sleep paralysis demon or something, to me he doesn't even seem like he would fake love. To me he seems like he would be like unapologetically evil, and like the way his voice sounds, if this is his voice, people have said this could be anyone else talking, but like when you hear his voice, he sounds like so villainy and snobby that I feel like he wouldn't even pretend to love you. He would be like an asshole, but maybe that's wrong. And I think what you're saying still makes sense. But we do see the fight. He's using his flame, lots of like flame spells and ground AoE, so that's a little bit scary. We also see our character using the Crucible Knight wings. So people talked about that this Twin Blade could be the Twin Blade of Abundance and Decay, a weapon that was previously cut out of the game, kind of talking about Mikola and Melania. I think Quailag said that. I haven't actually seen that cut weapon. It could be any Twin Blade, but maybe it has somehow ties to the Crucible. It looks like the Twin Blade is what was using the Ash of War here, presumably, with the wings. But it could also be this new shield, because we're also seeing this shield, this dual shield that also has spikes on each side. So this is basically a dual-wield Twin Blade. I wonder if this would have the power stance moveset of two Twin Blades, or if this would be entirely separate weapons. But I do think the design of the shield is really cool. And then Mesmer is also jumping using a spear imbued with his flame. And we get like a pretty reminiscent shot of the fight between Godric and our protagonist in the original trailer, which is cool. Now, this next shot, I kind of agree with the more I see people talk about this, because we get our like likely Mikola reveal. The more I look at this shot, it really does remind me a little bit of the original cutscene when you fight Melina. Like, as you would enter some sort of boss fight, and you would meet Mikola there, and this would be like part of the cutscene before you fight them. Now, it is not really... It doesn't seem likely right now that Mikola is a boss or somebody we fight, because they are clearly guiding us through the lands of shadow. But I feel like it could be a classic reveal at the end that we were actually the one bewitched this entire time. He was wielding love against us, and suddenly it's revealed that there were like different intentions or something. Could be entirely wrong. It's literally not even based on any lore that I think about this. It's mostly based on that I've seen so many people say this does look suspiciously like a boss intro cutscene, and the more I've looked at this part, I feel like, okay, I see it. Can't really base that in anything else than that, but I feel like there is like a small chance that this will be a reveal at the end. Because mainly as well, because I can see Mesmer being like the big end boss of the DLC. With how much he's like the poster child and how much we've seen him. Especially because Miyazaki once again said there's going to be especially hard optional bosses, and this guy would probably not be the optional especially hard boss if he's like on the cover. I feel like he might be the equivalent of Radagon, but there might still be another Moog and another Melania in the game. I hope they restore Asimi and the other Saint Trina related NPCs in the DLC. Yeah, we talked about Rico at the start as well, that many people said that this might actually be them because they were supposed to lead you to this boss arena. But we'll see. Maybe it will be like slightly changed and altered. But how troll would it be if he was an optional boss? I mean, it would be a From Software thing to do, but like, I mean, okay, the Elden Ring, I guess the Elden Ring cover technically had Vike, I believe, on it, which is like a random ever jail boss, so everything is possible. But that's pretty much it, right? Everything that's left remaining here is the release date in 4 months. This is where the game's coming out. We see the Ring of Miquella gesture, which I don't think has much else to do with any lore-related stuff. And then the only other things that are interesting to me here is just this icon that's also depicted on the back of Mesmer's cloak, which once again, that flame on the left side and some like intertwined reef on the right side again. Looks like there's a spear featured on it. Again, that left side reminded me a little bit of, once again, the Briars of Sin or the Dragon Communion seal, but it could be completely different symbolism. But that's pretty much my thoughts on Shadow of the Erdtree. It only took 1 hour and 20 minutes, so feel free to discuss your thoughts in the comments or in Twitch chat. Really excited for the game.